Bulletins. Now let's cross borders to look at the Germany parliament that is set to commemorate the millions of people who were deprived of their rights, persecuted and martyred during the Nazi regime. These camps, as world leaders and survivors, commemorated the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz concentration camp. Let's get to have more details from DW's Thomas Sparrow right here. Well, Thomas, very good afternoon from the Pearl of Africa. And what role does the Holocaust remembrance still play in Germany 80 years after the end of World War II?
And a very good afternoon to everyone from us here in Berlin, where indeed the main topic of discussion in the last few days are those commemorations that you mentioned. On the one hand, the commemorations of the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. You may know that Auschwitz was the main Nazi concentration camp, and as such, those commemorations are particularly important, particularly sensitive as well. And then also the yearly commemoration here in the German parliament honoring the victims of the Nazi regime and specifically mentioning that these kinds of crimes, these kinds of situations should never happen again. Now, memory, culture, or cultural remembrance, as it's also called, plays a very, very significant role here in Germany. It's an essential part of German identity after the Second World War. That idea that Germany's responsibility must be clearly stated, that Germany's responsibility must be also taught and learned for future generations to understand what went wrong and how this should be prevented in the future. And since I'm talking about future generations, this is also something particularly important because those who survived the Holocaust are now very old. Many have already died. And as such, there is also an appeal for younger generations to understand the implications of what happened 80 years ago.
There have been continuous refusals from or attempts of denial of the Holocaust from the far right. How is this memory, culture being kept on? But also, what are some of the key messages given by the world leaders together with those survivors still present?
Indeed, members of the far right here in Germany have called also in the past few years, but recently, for a change to that culture of remembrance, for Germans to feel proud again, for that guilt, as they call it, to be reduced, for Germans to be able to feel proud about their identity once again. And these calls, as well as other calls that we've heard in past years, have generated huge controversy here in the country because it is understood that that culture of remembrance, which is very evident in the country, should be upheld. That is the view of the government. That is the view of the majority of the population, that the culture of remembrance in Germany is very important, not only when we talk about the past in the country, but also when we talk about the future of the country. And as I mentioned, about those younger generations understanding what happened in the past so that it's not repeated in the future. And that was also part of the main discussion, or part of the main message that was given during those commemorations in Auschwitz. And also, by the way, part of the message that is going to be delivered today here in Berlin. That significance of the culture of remembrance at a time when members of the far right are questioning it, and when there is a rise here in Germany, but also in other parts of the world, a rise of anti-Semitism that is very worrying and concerning for governments around the world.
All right, thank you very much, Thomas Sparrow, for that update. And we hope that we'll continue to have lessons picked and definitely taking them on. You're still watching NBS Live at 1. We'll be taking a very short commercial break and return with more news.